The scene opens in a quiet, ornate room, but the silence is shattered by a sudden struggle. A maid gasps for air, tears streaming down her face, and a pair of eyes snap open in dawning horror. Our boy finds himself on a bed over the terrified woman. His hands are somehow gripping her neck. She struggles, confused and unable to speak. And frankly, he has no idea what's going on either. His mind races, questioning his own horrifying actions. He scrambles back in a panic, mortified by what he's just done. He stumbles toward a mirror, head throbbing in pain. The maid's voice calls out a name, Alphonse. A name that means nothing to him. And then it hits him. He's been reincarnated into a game. The world of dominant tactics, a kingdom ruled by magic. He remembers the game's protagonist, Sieg Mind, a kind-hearted commoner destined to save the world and win the heroine's heart. But our boy wasn't reborn as the hero. He's Alphonse, the story's worst villain. A cruel bully whose terrible actions lead to his own downfall. Realizing the horror of his situation, he knows he has to apologize. He bows low, offering a sincere and desperate apology. The maid, utterly bewildered, asks him to leave. Once she's gone, the weight of his new reality crashes down. He slams his small fist against the floor in frustration. His hand is soaked with tears as he questions his fate. Why, he cries, was I reborn as the story's worst villain? The boy collapses, sobbing uncontrollably on the carpet. But he quickly realizes this is no time for despair. He returns to the mirror, estimating his current age at 10. And he remembers the game's plot. In 5 years, he'll face the hero and his own destruction. He sits and thinks, determined to avoid his grim fate. His first rule, stay away from the main characters. He'll just blend in, becoming a background character. A foolproof plan, surely nothing can go wrong. He'll also need to get strong enough to survive on his own. With his new plan in mind, a spark of hope returns. He wipes away his tears, his resolve hardening. His training will begin at dawn. And as the sun rises on a new day, the same maid from before goes about her duties. Her name is Rico Fleur, and she braces for another day of torment. She recalls his strange, apologetic behavior from the night before, but she steels herself, expecting him to be back to his usual self, only to find him collapsed on the floor in a puddle of sweat. She panics, thinking he's dehydrated and needs water immediately. She rushes to his side, offering him a drink. He thanks her, explaining he pushed himself too hard during training. Her brain short-circuits, unable to process this new, polite villain. Alphonse looks back, confused by her stunned silence. He then asks about breakfast, his hunger finally setting in. Rico serves him a beautiful breakfast, which he greets with delight. She remembers the old Alphonse, a spoiled brat who demanded to be fed. But this new version happily prepares to eat on his own. She's completely floored that he's feeding himself, a truly shocking development. She wheels the cart away, her mind still reeling from the change. He finishes every last bite, thanking her for the delicious meal. The maid is left utterly speechless by this transformation. After a satisfying meal, he gets up for a good stretch. He then remembers another person the villain tormented in the game, and sets out to find them within the grand family estate. Another maid appears, announcing it's time for his magic lesson. He heads out, leaving yet another servant in stunned silence. He remembers his tutor, Roselia, another victim whose life was ruined by the villain's cruelty. He finds her waiting in the garden, determined to make things right. He calls out her name, and she flinches, expecting the worst. But once again, he bows low, apologizing for everything. He promises to take his studies seriously, leaving her utterly baffled. The lesson begins, and Alphonse is practically vibrating with excitement. And so his magical training gets underway, only to collapse moments later, completely drained of energy. He realizes that magic requires far more stamina than he thought. He calls out to Roselia, who flinches, still on edge. He asks for her help choosing a book to study on his own, a request so unheard of it nearly breaks her brain. So they head off with Alphonse carrying a stack of books. But they're stopped by a stern-looking man, his father. The man questions what his son is doing with all those books. He even asks if Alphonse plans to sell them for a quick profit. Roselia explains his newfound desire to study, but his father simply scoffs and walks away. His father reacts with utter disbelief. Roselia explains how hard he's been pushing himself. The man reluctantly agrees, seeing his son's motivation. But he silently warns Roselia to remain cautious. And so, Alphonse's new daily routine begins. His mornings are now dedicated to physical training. His afternoons are spent practicing magic, and his nights are for studying spellbooks. A full month passes in this new routine. Finally, he feels ready to test his progress. He starts with a complex spell, slime generation, but he decides to add his own little twist to the formula. The magical water begins to bubble and transform, and with a sudden burst of magical energy, a new creature is born into the world. It lands with a soft little plop on his desk. Alphonse cheers, ecstatic that his experiment was a success. He holds his new creation, deciding it needs a name. He settles on the very creative and original name of Poogie, and our former villain is now happily playing with his new pet slime. He realizes Poogie is the first being to show him any kindness. After a month of hard work, he still hasn't earned anyone's trust. A single tear escapes as the loneliness sets in. But his new friend offers a small, comforting nuzzle. He quickly wipes his eyes, trying to stay strong. This only hardens his resolve to survive in this world. He vows to continue pushing himself day after day. But elsewhere, in a humble part of the kingdom, another pair of eyes snap open with sudden awareness. A young boy with dark hair looks around, completely lost. He questions his unfamiliar surroundings. But a jolt of recognition hits him. This is the Protagonist's room. He even spots a key item from the game, the Mirror of Memories. And in its reflection, he sees the face of the game's hero. He finds a piece of paper that confirms his suspicions. The name written on it is Sieg Mind. A wave of pure elation washes over him. Unlike Alphonse, this guy is absolutely thrilled to be reincarnated as the hero. He immediately thinks of the game's beautiful heroines and dreams of the life of romance that awaits him. He's practically drooling at the thought of his future harem, but a quick reality check reminds him he's still just a kid. He groans, wishing he could just fast forward to the main story. Meanwhile, our actual protagonist, Alphonse, is on a very different path. While Sieg dreams of glory, Alphonse is fighting for his very survival. Back at the estate, Roselia recalls the cruel brat he used to be. But the boy she sees now is completely different. He's in the garden, pushing his magical abilities to their limit. He strains to maintain control, counting down the final seconds. But his concentration breaks and the spell dissipates. The orb of water collapses back into the bucket. Roselia is stunned, realizing his power already rivals that of an adult noble. He eagerly asks how he can improve and hold the spell for longer. Alphonse looks back, completely confused by her answer. He insists he wants to master the fundamentals of magic control, but she explains that her lessons are limited to the beginner level. He pleads with her to teach him more, desperate to grow stronger, but she flatly refuses and turns to leave. He's crushed, realizing just how deeply she must despise him, and she can't help but remember all the torment he's put her through. But as he stands there, he notices a familiar face watching him. He calls out to Rico, who jumps back in absolute terror. He realizes that just speaking to them is enough to cause fear. With his lessons on hold, he decides to find another way to train. He gears up, ready to become adventurer Alphonse. He remembers a dungeon in the nearby forest from the game. With Poogie on his shoulder, he sets off on his first quest. He makes his way through the streets of the local town. But he quickly overhears some troubling news from the locals. It seems a group of bandits has been plaguing the area. He files away the information about the bandits for later, and continues on his way deep into the forest. He soon arrives at the entrance to the dungeon. In the game, this was a low-level area, easily cleared, but this is his first time in a real dungeon, so he proceeds with caution. He pauses for a moment, thinking about his next move, realizing he probably should have brought a light source. But just then, he spots a faint glow nearby, because every good adventurer carries a textbook, apparently, and what he reads leaves him completely stunned. Back at the estate, word of Alphonse's strange behavior is spreading. Rico stands in the courtyard, still processing her recent encounter, when she's suddenly approached by a familiar voice. It's his magic tutor, Roselia. She asks if Rico has seen Alphonse, explaining he vanished mid-lesson. Rico looks away, struggling to explain what happened. She admits that she ran away in fear when he called out to her. The two women share a moment of stunned silence, before coming to the exact same unbelievable conclusion. Roselia marvels at his rapid growth, unable to believe this is the same boy she once despised. Rico confesses that his past cruelty made her miserable, but she struggles to reconcile that memory with his new kindness. Their conversation is cut short by a sudden violent crash. The bandits from the town have finally made their move. They corner the two women, holding a strange, bubbling concoction. The men grin, seeing this as a lucky break. Roselia and Rico can only watch in frozen terror. A bandit grabs Rico, silencing her as he tries to drag her away. But in a flash of movement, a strange armored figure appears to protect her, and unleashes a powerful splash arrow spell on the bandits. Roselia is stunned by the incredible precision of his magic. He rushes forward, checking if Roselia and Rico are all right. Rico can only stare, whispering his name in disbelief. His tutor is equally speechless at the sight. The remaining bandits curse, ordering their men to attack the boy. But Roselia isn't about to stand by and do nothing, casting a spell that causes the very ground to erupt. The bandits find themselves trapped, unable to move a muscle. Alphonse looks back, absolutely thrilled by his teacher's power. But one of the bandits breaks free, lunging toward Rico with a blade. Alphonse immediately springs into action. He unleashes a powerful aqua lance, blasting the man back and shattering his weapon. He's just glad his dungeon training came in handy so soon. The remaining bandits are completely immobilized by Roselia's spell. She stammers, completely baffled by the magic he just used. Rico can only call out his name in disbelief. He turns to them, relieved that they're both safe. And in a surprising gesture, he receives a gentle pat on the head. Overwhelmed with emotion, Rico pulls him into a tight hug, thanking him for his courage. Roselia offers her own heartfelt thanks as the guards finally lead the bandits away. The next day, Alphonse is summoned to his father's study to report the incident. He and Roselia stand nervously before the imposing man, unsure what to expect. Alphonse explains that Roselia did most of the work, downplaying his own role. His father listens, surprised to hear that his son fought alongside his tutor. And in a gesture that shocks them both, he places a hand on Alphonse's head. For the first time, the boy receives a simple word of praise, and his face lights up with joy. With the bandits captured, security in the nearby town is strengthened. And back at the estate, the walls of fear have finally come down. He grins, asking for more training now that his advanced magic is out in the open. Roselia and Rico happily agree, promising to support him however they can. Though their support has become a little overprotective, as Rico forbids him from going out alone. And with this newfound peace, 2 years pass in the blink of an eye. Alphonse is now 12, with only 3 years until he's set to enter the Magic Academy. His healthy lifestyle has completely transformed him, both physically and in his relationships. He now enjoys pleasant afternoons having tea with Rico, and his studies with Roselia have become a source of joy for them both. Even his once stern father has softened, awkwardly offering to buy him gifts. Now healthier and more confident, he spends his time exploring the town within his family's territory. He and Rico now spend their days exploring the town together. She happily comments on the lovely weather for a stroll, though he knows this is less of a stroll and more of a forced escort. They stop at a well in the center of the town square. Rico watches, confused, as he begins to work the pump. He explains he's using magic to test the water quality, and with a familiar spell, he generates a small slime. He places the creature on the ground, where it begins to absorb the runoff. He explains that this slime is designed to purify dirty water. His goal is to improve life for his people and to have a clean town to live in if he ever gets exiled. Rico is moved to tears by his thoughtful gesture. She bursts out with praise for his incredible kindness. Her sudden, intense reaction completely terrifies him, and she pulls him into another one of her signature overprotective hugs. But their moment is interrupted by the sound of a child crying nearby. They turn to see a small, lost-looking girl with fox ears. The nearby townsfolk just stare, muttering cruel remarks. Alphonse explains that beastmen face heavy discrimination in this world. Rico looks at him, a silent understanding passing between them. She's once again overwhelmed by the kindness of the boy he's become. Alphonse is left completely flustered by her intense praise. He knows he can't just leave a crying child, especially with Rico cheering him on. He approaches the small girl, gently asking where she came from. But his kindness is only met with more wailing. Our boy is at a total loss, realizing he has zero experience with kids. He stands frozen by the well as the girl continues to sob. And then, a brilliant idea finally hits him. He uses his magic, causing the water to splash and bubble. He creates a dazzling display of waterfish, instantly capturing her attention. The water itself begins to rise, forming a playful shape. He molds the water into the shape of a small rabbit. The little girl's tears are instantly replaced with wide-eyed wonder. The nearby townsfolk turn, drawn by the unusual sight. A crowd begins to form, wondering if it's some kind of street performance. They're stunned to see a noble using magic for a beast-man child. Alphonse smiles, creating a beautiful display of water flowers and bubbles. But his act of kindness has drawn some unwanted attention. A young noble girl arrives, identified as Regine Olsen. She glances over, intrigued by the commotion in the square, and asks her maid what could possibly be causing such a stir. Her maid is stunned by the sudden gathering of onlookers. Alphonse continues his magical performance, a bright smile on his face. The little beastman girl is completely mesmerized by the spectacle, and from the sidelines, Regine Olsen watches the scene unfold. He solidifies a small orb of water in his hand and offers it to the little girl as a small present. Her face absolutely explodes with happiness, but Alphonse suddenly realizes he's become the center of attention. His plan to be a background character is officially in shambles as the girl's mother appears. He waves an awkward goodbye as the family thanks him profusely. Rico is a flustered mess, barely able to speak his name. He tries to make a quick getaway, but she's still overwhelmed by his kindness. The townsfolk are all smiles, grateful for the impromptu performance. But Alphonse is lost in his own thoughts. He hopes that one day prejudice will fade from his lands. The crowd continues to buzz about the incredible water magic they just witnessed, and from afar, Regine Olsen watches him leave, completely captivated. Meanwhile, in the Commoners District, another story is unfolding. The hero in training, Sieg, gets knocked flat on his back during practice. His sparring partner admits that Sieg has already surpassed him in strength. He smirks, confident that he was reborn as the legendary hero. But his thoughts are interrupted by a voice calling his name. He turns to find a group of girls from his class. One of them, pushed forward by her friends, asks him out. But Sieg immediately rejects her, leaving the girl stunned. He explains that he's already decided who he's going to be with, and with that he turns and walks away. But his cold rejection only makes the girls swoon even more. Sieg, of course, is only thinking of the game's main heroine, Princess Olivia. And as he dreams of royalty, Regine Olsen continues to watch Alphonse from afar. Sieg reflects on his cool exit, noting there are 3 years until he and Alphonse meet at the academy. The stage for their fateful encounter is already set. But Alphonse has been busy, spending a month in a B-rank dungeon and pushing himself to the brink. He finally returns to the estate, completely exhausted, only to be met with a fierce scolding that sends him flying. He's promptly grounded, and Rico makes it clear this is non-negotiable. She lectures him for his recklessness, but he explains he knew she would have stopped him. He reflects on his progress, but realizes he'll need more than just magic to survive as an adventurer. And elsewhere in the mansion, his father sighs, admitting his son has become quite a handful. His father complains that while his son has improved, he's also become unpredictable. But a servant steps forward, claiming to have a solution to the problem. A brilliant plan to keep the young master in line. The next day, Alphonse is told he has a visitor, Regine Olsen. He remembers her from the game, his fiancée and one of the main heroines. Their families arranged the marriage to secure political and financial ties. In short, it was a purely strategic engagement. A maid gushes that Regine will be so impressed, but Alphonse isn't keen on meeting her. She's practically vibrating with excitement for their reunion. And so, Alphonse waits, dressed for the occasion and dreading every second of it. Her maid worries she might catch a cold, but Regine insists she'll be fine. Over at the Grand Olsen family estate, Regine prepares for her long-dreaded meeting with Alphonse. She remembers the boy her parents forced her to marry, a spoiled brat with absolutely zero table manners. The thought of seeing him again is so awful, she briefly considers jumping. She wishes she could marry the handsome water mage instead, the same kind stranger she saw in the town square. Her maid, Celia, arrives with a fresh pot of tea. Regine thanks her, steeling herself for the day ahead. Her maid, Celia, notices her lady's distracted gaze. She asks if Regine is thinking about the water mage again. Regine tries to deny it, but her bright red face tells a different story. Celia just giggles, amused by her lady's obvious crush. As they sit down for tea, Celia reminds her of the dreaded meeting with Alphonse, but she adds that there are new rumors about the Valier family. A visit might even provide a clue to the water mage's identity. With a spark of hope, Regine prays she'll finally meet him, and so she heads for the Valier family estate. A maid bursts in, announcing it's time for his meeting with Regine. But Alphonse is anything but thrilled, fidgeting with his collar. He worries Regine despises him, but Rico insists he's a changed man. He thinks to himself that she's not wrong, he's a completely different person. She gushes about his kindness in town, calling him the water mage, and with a firm push she sends him off to greet his guest. Outside, a grand carriage pulls up to the estate. A single, elegant shoe steps onto the pavement, as Regine Olsen makes her grand entrance. Alphonse puts on a brave face, greeting his fiancée for the first time. Regine looks at him, wondering who this handsome stranger is. She walks right past him, asking for Alphonse. He nervously explains that he's the one she's looking for. Her mind flashes between the boy she sees now and the brat she remembers. The revelation completely shatters her reality. After a moment to reboot, they finally sit down for tea. She apologizes, admitting his transformation caught her off guard. But the apology is followed by a painfully awkward silence. Our boy is practically dying from the sheer awkwardness of it all. Reene, on the other hand, sips her tea with perfect, noble grace. He tries to make small talk, admitting he's not used to this noble lifestyle either. Reene perks up, asking if he's been training with magic lately. But the conversation quickly fizzles out, and that's pretty much all they said. The very next day, a maid rushes in with some startling news. Reene has come to visit again for the third day in a row. Alphonse complains to Rico that he has no idea what to talk about with her. Meanwhile, Celia suspects Reene is trying to confirm if Alphonse is the water mage. Alphonse wonders if she's trying to get him to break off the engagement. But his mention of sword training sends Rico into a full-blown panic. The thought of him wielding a sword is so shocking, she's convinced the world is ending. He explains that in this world, swords are considered weapons for commoners. But he knows he'll eventually be exiled and needs every skill he can get to survive. Rico is once again moved to tears by his noble intentions. She admits that he's become so admirable, she almost feels lonely. She quickly dismisses her comment, leaving Alphonse completely baffled. He asks Rico to cancel his tea with Reene and heads for the Adventurers Guild. He arrives at the training grounds hoping to find a teacher, but he quickly overhears some adventurers mocking the idea of a noble swordsman. They even start bad-mouthing him, unaware he's standing right there. It turns out his father already refused, getting overly emotional about his son growing up. His father, in a fit of parental pride, vows to hire the best teacher money can buy. Alphonse can only wonder what kind of person his dad managed to find. And then, a new figure steps into the training grounds. He's stunned to see Kareah Howell, the S-rank sword saint, a woman who, due to her tragic past, has a deep-seated hatred for all nobles. She explains the guild sent her to be his new instructor, and she leans in, promising to go easy on the spoiled little lord. But Alphonse is determined to prove her wrong, gripping his sword with resolve. Kareah reflects on her past, remembering all the students who couldn't handle her harsh training. She fully expects this noble brat to quit within a few days, and her training is every bit as brutal as her reputation suggests. She calls it a day, as the onlookers whisper about her harsh methods. But Alphonse simply bows, thanking her and promising to be back tomorrow. Kareah scoffs, certain he's just saying that and will never show his face again. But the very next day, he's back, covered in bandages and ready for round 2. His unwavering resolve leaves the sword saint completely stunned. No matter how many times she knocks him down, Alphonse just keeps getting back up, swinging his sword with everything he has. She realizes the rumors of a spoiled noble were wrong. This kid has real talent. And so, their grueling training regimen continues day after day. The clash of their swords echoes through the training hall. He unleashes a powerful strike, catching even the sword saint off guard. For the first time, Kareah offers him a genuine word of praise. Alphonse is left completely speechless by the compliment. He beams with joy, thanking her for the lesson. Later that night, Kareah reflects on her student's incredible progress. She realizes that at this rate, he'll surpass her in just a year and a half, and she knows that once he does, her time as his teacher will be over. She wants to stay by his side and watch him grow, but doesn't know how. And back at the Valir estate, a new plan is already taking shape. After another lesson, Alphonse thanks his tutor for her time. But Roselia looks back with a somber expression. She suddenly announces that she's resigning as his tutor. She explains that he has already surpassed her abilities, and that his father has already approved her departure. He protests, saying he still wants to learn from her. But her decision is final and he can only accept it. She smiles, thanking him for being a true gentleman. He reflects on how far he's come from being the hated villain. They shake hands, promising to study magic together again one day. He's just glad he could change her tragic fate from the original game. The very next day, Kareah waits at the Adventurers Guild. She's surprised to see Alphonse arrive for his lesson. He asks her for a proper match using real swords this time. She notices a new seriousness in his eyes, and so the two of them prepare to face off. Kareah lunges forward, determined not to go down easy, but Alphonse meets her strike with perfect form. Their blades clash in a flurry of sparks. Kareah parries his attack with deadly precision. Alphonse lunges forward, aiming a sharp thrust, but she easily deflects the blow. He realizes his attack was just a feint, as she counters with a powerful overhead strike. But Kareah is the one left in shock, because Alphonse manages to block her counterattack. The onlookers can barely follow the lightning-fast exchange. Kareah smiles, impressed, asking if he could see her blade, and Alphonse, breathless, confirms that he could. He explains that he's been studying her every move, her breathing, her gaze, her center of gravity. He's trained his body to react instinctively to her speed. Kareah decides it's time to show him her true power. Her expression hardens with deadly intent. She unleashes her ultimate technique, a spinning aerial slash. A move he remembers from the game, capable of ending a fight in one hit. But our boy isn't panicking, because he knows the secret to countering this very attack. He moves in sync with her rotation, slipping into her blind spot. And with a single precise movement, he has his blade at her throat. The Sword Saint can only admit her complete and utter defeat. But she's not angry. She's beaming with pride, calling him the real deal. Alphonse humbly insists that in a real fight, he would have lost. But Kareah has a serious request for her student. She asks to resign as his master, leaving Alphonse completely stunned. She explains that she has nothing left to teach him, but he protests. He tearfully begs her to stay, explaining that Roselia just left too. He insists she's still stronger and that he needs her guidance. But Kareah realizes the truth. He has a mental block about surpassing her and is unconsciously holding back. She explains that he's only holding back out of respect for her. But she's not quite finished with him yet. She kneels, asking to serve him not as a teacher, but as his knight. The crowd erupts, stunned that the unaffiliated Sword Saint is pledging loyalty to a noble. Alphonse hesitates, knowing that in the game she was destined to be the hero's knight. But he also knows she's the one person who truly believed in his swordsmanship. Realizing he can't just turn her down, he agrees to the contract. Kareah's face absolutely lights up with joy, and so Alphonse prepares to perform the knighting ceremony. She looks up, ready to swear her oath of lifelong loyalty. He taps her shoulders with his blade, officially making her his knight. And with that, the years begin to fly by. Alphonse is now 15, and the day to enter the Magic Academy has finally arrived. The entire household staff lines up to wish him a tearful farewell. He offers them a warm smile, thanking them for their support. His father, Rico, and Roselia are an absolute mess, sobbing uncontrollably. But the butler then presents him with an absurdly flashy uniform, followed by an equally ridiculous gold-plated carriage. Alphonse can only stare, wondering what his father was possibly thinking. The butler explains it's to earn the praise of the commoners. Yeah, that's not going to make him a target at all. He hesitates, but the butler explains there's no time to find another carriage. But his morning is interrupted by a familiar voice calling his name. It's Regine Olsen, his fiancée, looking radiant in her new uniform. She seems flustered, asking why he's out here so early. She insists that as his fiancée, they should naturally travel together. She then looks away, hurt, asking if he doesn't want to go with her. But her mood shifts in an instant as she yells about his tacky carriage. She storms off, leaving Alphonse to deal with the emotional whiplash. He figures she must hate him, just like in the game, but Rico thinks otherwise. He asks if she's sure, but Rico just calls him dense, completely exasperated. Rico explains that Regine is just the type who can't be honest with her feelings. But in her mind, she sees the fiancé as a powerful rival for his affection. Alphonse asks what's wrong, but she quickly says it's nothing. She just reminds him that he's going to be late for school, and so the absurdly flashy carriage finally sets off down the road. Inside, Alphonse reaffirms his one and only goal: stay away from the main characters. Back at the estate, Kareah and Rico are gushing over their young master. They're watching a recording of his training on a magical device. Both of them agree that the world needs to know about his incredible talent, but Alphonse is determined to do the exact opposite, hoping to remain completely invisible. But his two biggest fans are already gushing over his every move. Kareah confirms she'll be joining him at the academy as his personal knight. Soon, their carriage arrives at the gates of the royal capital. Rico marvels at the sheer scale of the city of Altria. Alphonse and Kareah take in the bustling streets. The capital is a sprawling metropolis, filled with shops and people from all walks of life. He recalls the game's map of the capital, realizing the neat districts are far more blended in reality. Meanwhile, his two attendants are already fighting over who gets to carry his bags. And after a fierce but friendly battle, Rico emerges victorious. Kareah is left in tears, lamenting her failure to protect her master's luggage. They finally arrive at their destination, the Septentrian Magic Academy. Alphonse realizes with a jolt that this is where the game's main story truly begins. But his thoughts are cut short by a sudden commotion nearby. A small girl cries on the ground as a harsh voice tells her to be quiet. A brutish-looking student looms over her, angry that a commoner is in his way. But just as he raises his hand, a figure flashes past, and a hand intercepts the blow, stopping the bully in his tracks. The game's hero, Siegmind, arrives with a reassuring smile. He offers the small girl a gentle pat on the head. The bully roars in anger, furious at the interruption, but Sieg just turns with a confident, almost smug smile. He prepares to cast a spell of his own, Lightning Arrow, and unleashes a powerful blast of electricity at his opponent. He explains he held back as the bully twitches on the ground. The girls thank him as he assures them the threat is neutralized. But his display of power has drawn the attention of another student. She introduces herself as Olivia, the game's main heroine, and from a distance, Alphonse watches the fated encounter unfold. He recognizes the hero Siegmind, and a cold sweat breaks out. But he notices Sieg looks far more sinister than he remembers from the game. The sound of a child's cry snaps him back to reality. The game's first major event is happening right in front of him. Sieg reassures the small elf girl, promising to heal her. He casts a gentle healing spell, bathing her in a warm light. The crowd, including Olivia, watches the scene unfold. But Sieg realizes the healing is taking longer than he thought. Turns out even a Protagonist level 1 healing spell is pretty weak. Rico worries the girl might be scarred, and Alphonse can only agree. Rico insists that Alphonse could easily heal the girl's wounds. Kareah watches from the crowd, a silent observer. Alphonse decides to act, figuring he can avoid Sieg later. He steps forward, kneeling to help the injured child. A powerful magical energy begins to gather in his hand. He prepares to cast a high-level healing spell. A brilliant light envelops the small girl's head. Sieg can only stare, completely stunned by the boy's power. Olivia is equally shocked by the incredible display of magic. And in a single moment, the girl's wounds completely disappear. The little elf girl is stunned, realizing the pain is completely gone. Her mother rushes forward, thanking him profusely for his help. But Alphonse just smiles, saying it's a noble's duty to help those in need. So much for being a background character. Rico is bursting with pride as he tries to leave. But his act of kindness has earned him a glare from the hero, Sieg. Alphonse pauses, sensing the hostility directed at him. He wonders if he imagined it, but Rico is already pointing the way. And so, they continue on their way to the academy, but his incredible display of magic has left a lasting impression on the game's main heroine, Olivia. And so the first day at the academy begins. But elsewhere, a fist clenches in pure, unadulterated rage. Sieg throws a private tantrum, his grand debut completely ruined. He can't understand who that silver-haired boy was, insisting a character like that shouldn't even exist in this world. In the original story, he was supposed to be the one to talk to Olivia, but now his fated encounter has been completely stolen from him. He seethes, realizing Alphonse looked far more heroic than he did. He refuses to accept this, vowing to reclaim his role as the true protagonist. And he decides that if this stranger is trying to destroy the original story, then he'll just have to be eliminated. He has no choice but to get rid of this new rival. And Alphonse can't shake the feeling that he's just made a powerful enemy.